Hey ladies, I just had a moment where I was thinking of saying, hello lady. If you've seen Princess Bride, you know exactly what I'm talking about. Sweet, sweet movie that you should definitely watch if you have not. Anyway, today we're talking about thyroid again. So this is part 2 of thyroid stuff. So today we're going to talk about the causes of thyroid dysregulation. So last time I talked to you about just the mechanism of the thyroid, what it does, the different thyroid active parts of the thyroid hormone and how they live in your body and how they interact with your body. And we're going to talk more about that in terms of fertility in a little bit. And today we're going to talk about the causes of thyroid conditions. So, in general, thyroid disorders refer to a group of disorders that cause dysregulated function of the thyroid gland, resulting in overproduction or underproduction of thyroid hormones. So, if you have overproduction, it would be hyperthyroid. And if you have underproduction, that would be hypothyroid. Now that's not TSH because the TSH has that feedback loop. So if you have hyperthyroidism, you will have a low TSH. If you have hypo, you'll have a high TSH. So the most common disorder is an autoimmune condition called Hashimoto's thyroiditis. That happens in 90% of women who have been diagnosed with hypothyroidism. 60 million people have been diagnosed with hypothyroidism. But here's the thing. Again, we have this scale of what's considered reasonable. And we kind of touched on this last time. So there is this, if you get your thyroid tested from a physician, they're going to look at you through the lens of Western medicine, which says if you are below 4.5, your TSH is below 4.5, there's no intervention they're going to do. But here's the thing. In functional medicine practice, in holistic practice, we say that if it's over 2.5 and like starting to begin around 2, it can definitely affect your fertility. We're going to talk about that more in the next couple episodes of the thyroid story that we're doing. So we want your TSH to be no more than 2, ideally. What I've found is that a lot of women have TSH that's over that, and they're not diagnosed with hypothyroidism, except they're subclinical, meaning that they don't really have too many blaring thyroid symptoms, and we're actually going to talk about those in one of these lives that I'm doing. And just writing myself a note. And here's the other part. If you have Hashimoto's, there's a really good chance that you haven't been diagnosed with it. So that 60 million people doesn't even touch the amount of people who have Hashimoto's, because it is completely undiagnosed. Western doctors aren't looking for it. And here's how I know. Because in order to diagnose that, you need to be looking at the 2 thyroid antibodies that basically attack your thyroid gland in your neck. They literally, your body attacks itself and deteriorates the thyroid tissue. By the way, that can grow back, which is amazing. And it can't go back unless you know that there's a problem and you're taking steps to heal it, right? So just a reminder about thyroid. It's involved in every function of the body. There are thyroid receptors on the ovaries and every single cell in the body. So all fertility function is contingent on a healthy thyroid. Thyroids control the metabolic function of the body. The hot and the cold. How fast things run. So, okay. So Hashimoto's thyroiditis is the autoimmune version of hypothyroidism. That is present in 90% of the people who've been diagnosed with hypothyroidism. So chances are, if you've been diagnosed with hypothyroid, you probably have Hashimoto's. The way you test that are 2 thyroid antibodies, and we'll talk about that soon. And I do that testing with my clients, mostly everyone. I'm testing everyone's thyroid now because I'm just seeing it as like a huge epidemic that's undiagnosed. So, Graves' disease is the hyperthyroid version of autoimmunity. So when you have autoimmunity, that means that your body is attacking its own cells. Parts of your body are seeing other parts of your body as infiltrators, not part of you. So if you're having that kind of autoimmune thing going on in your body that's unregulated, it can definitely cause challenges with fertility and miscarriage. Like, this is where miscarriage happens, because if our body has a lot of inflammation, inflammation happens with autoimmunity. Things in the body get inflamed, they get dysregulated, your body's attacking itself. Not a hospitable environment for a baby. So our goal is to reduce autoimmune symptomatology, reduce inflammation. And there are strategies for that. So anyway, let's talk about the causes of hypothyroidism. So, birth control pill. This was something that was shocking for me to learn. Birth control pill has many, many, many implications that nobody talks about, and I'm kind of curious too if the reason why so many women have hypothyroidism is because they've been on the pill for so many years. So that's a really interesting thing that I've been kind of marinating on. So the pill increases thyroid globulin, which is a protein that binds binds to thyroid hormone. So it attaches to thyroid hormone, and then it prevents it from being free-flowing in the body to be used by the body. So we've got that T3, which is the active form of thyroid, which is like circulating, and your body uptakes it in the cells when it's necessary. Birth control increases thyroid globulin, which basically attaches to those free thyroid hormones and prevents them from being free to be used by the body. And this slows down thyroid function. It will also shoot up your TSH, because remember, your TSH goes up when there's less thyroid available in your body. This is a really big one, because with Hashimoto's, we're looking at gut health specifically. Because if your gut is not processing things efficiently, it can definitely affect your thyroid function. We'll talk about that in a minute. So birth control pills also weaken your gut's ability to absorb key minerals that are integral for thyroid health, namely iron. So again, people that were on the birth control pill previously, it might have caused what we call in Chinese medicine blood deficiency. And also just low iron levels that might not be anemic, but not ideal, right? You need good functioning gut health to absorb iron. Excess estrogen is something we talk about a lot. Excess estrogen is really common in our society because we are surrounded by toxic chemicals and pollutants. So plastics, flame retardants, Teflon, or any kind of like non-stick cooking material, scented candles, room deodorizers, sprays, cleaners, plastic, all of those things, most of them have lots of chemicals in them that are unregulated. Why? Because the plastics industry has a lot of lobbying power in our country. That's why. And big industry and corporations have a lot of lobbying power to prevent them from taking responsibility from not dumping toxins into our water systems and into the earth. And anyway, it's a whole other conversation. However, estrogen, excess estrogen, or estrogen dominance will cause the liver to produce excess levels of thyroid globulin. And we just talked about that, right? When there's excess thyroid globulin, it attaches to thyroid hormone, prevents it from getting absorbed into the cells that need it, okay? So, the thing about BPA and these toxins that are in industrial modern life is that they have something called xenoestrogens in them. They're estrogen mimickers. So they're these toxic chemicals that when your body talks to them, your body believes that it's estrogen. So then everything else regulates and essentially dysregulates in reaction to that. So we want no excess estrogen. Excess estrogen causes an imbalance with progesterone, can create problems with fertility. So apparently it also has an effect on the thyroid. And this might show up because your thyroid might actually be working fine, but you will feel symptoms of inadequate thyroid hormone or hypothyroidism because of these xenoestrogens. So lack of iodine, we stopped using table salt and we all use sea salt now, and that's not the greatest thing in the world because we were using iodized salt, which was giving us iodine in our system. You can actually source iodine from those little sea snack vegetables, if you've seen them. They're seaweed. You could eat like a couple of those a day, and that's a great source of iodine, but you don't want to supplement with iodine unless you're working with a health practitioner. It's very tricky. And actually, although lack of iodine could be a cause, they're finding that it's not really one of the biggest ones. Iodine deficiency is shows up in hypothyroidism though. So thyroid cells are the only cells in the body that can absorb iodine. So it's important that your thyroid is working so it can absorb the iodine. So I think mostly the iodine deficiency, like chicken and the egg. I personally think the iodine deficiency comes after the hypothyroidism because your body can't absorb it versus it's what caused it. So that's just my take. Stress. Of course, stress is always on the list, isn't it? So stress, good old stress is at it again. So cortisol in general is not our friend. Unless our friend is stuck underneath the wheels of a car from an accident and we need this super Herculean strength to lift up the car, and cortisol and endorphins come in and like help us do that. But generally cortisol is not our friend because it dysregulates thyroid hormone, progesterone. I mean, it just all over wreaks havoc hormonally. So it also affects the pituitary and the hypothalamus. So those are thyroid parts of the brain that are really active in the brain. And again, cause your body to make less T3. T3 is at active form, and it blocks your actual thyroid receptors in your body so your cells don't get the thyroid they need to function. Cortisol. That is what cortisol does. Jerk. So another thing I want to talk about cortisol is like when you are under a lot of stress, it can activate autoimmune disease. Like we just talked, right? Stress can cause thyroid problems. Stress can also cause something, I've been seeing this show up potentially in some of my clients, is Epstein-Barr virus in a chronic form that's undiagnosed. Epstein-Barr, you probably know it from mono. It's what causes mono, it causes strep throat, it causes shingles. Anyway, you can have, most people have this virus dormant in them. You've already had a sore throat, you kind of got over it, but under stress, it can wake this up, wake your Epstein-Barr virus up, and then it can be chronically injuring to your body. So what that would look like is extreme next level fatigue, like beyond hot, like low cortisol, like burnt out, like adrenal burnout, like beyond that. I think there's probably something that goes along with that, but so Epstein-Barr can actually cause Hashimoto's. Something to look for. If you have extreme exhaustion and your doctors aren't listening to you, you need to see someone who can test for you. You need to like see someone who's going to listen to you and not just say, oh, well, everything's fine. It's like, well, no, there's something that you're not seeing here. Could be chronic fatigue, could be Hashimoto's, could be Epstein-Barr virus, could be a number of things. So really find practitioners who are going to listen to you. Okay, we talked about estrogen. We talked about endocrine disrupting chemicals. Again, PFAS, xenoestrogens, BPA, right? We already talked about that. Here's one. If you historically have been a chronic dieter or eater of low-fat foods, this can be a problem in so many ways. So fat is good for you. And fertility fat is your friend. You want to eat the fat, the good fat. The butter, the ghee, the coconut oil, the avocados, the nuts. And I always tell people, if you're gonna get ice cream, if you're gonna get milk, I don't recommend milk, by the way, but if you're gonna do it, get full fat, because it adds insult to injury when you take the fat out of things. The fat keeps you fuller longer, and fat builds hormones. Fat builds hormones. You need fat and cholesterol to make a hormone. So, that aside, the problem with chronic dieting and low-fat food intake is that it can create something called leptin resistance. So leptin is a body weight and thyroid function regulator in the body. And when we chronically diet and eat low-fat food, your body will create resistance to leptin. Okay? So we definitely don't want to be doing low fat. You definitely don't want to be doing low fat anything when you're trying to conceive, by the way. It's not a time for low fat foods. I do a detox with my women who I work with, but it is a Chinese medicine detox, which basically means like, you know, the basics. But we are not counting calories. We are not reducing fat intake. It is not your typical detox. So, again, Hashimoto's thyroiditis can also cause thyroid problems. So it's an autoimmune thyroid disease that when your body attacks the actual thyroid gland, I told you. And then one thing I want to talk about lastly is the gut. Actually, you know what? We're going to save this. This is a 15-minute Instagram. So we're going to come back to this, and I look forward to talking to you more about it. So if you want to leave a note below about anything related to this live, do it up. I want to hear you. And I hope you have a beautiful week. More next week.